Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pulse of Spokane. This week, Megan sits down with Justin Reed from Greater American Construction to discuss the business. And I also get to sit down with Sky Nickel and his campaign. But first, a word from our sponsors.
At Eastern Washington University, biologists are harnessing gut microbes to build stronger bees. Composers are writing music to help us understand how salmon migrate. And geology joins forces with robotics to explore innovative solutions for climate change. An interdisciplinary education that gets real about the real world, that's the new thing. It isn't a tagline, it's a philosophy wrapped in red and white. It is Eastern Washington and you.
Hi everyone, welcome to My House, My Home. I'm your host Megan Franz, and today I'm joined with Justin Reed. He is a sales manager at Greater American Construction, and he's gonna tell us a little bit about what he does.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Megan.
Yeah, thank you. So tell me a little bit about Greater American Construction.
So it's a family-ran business. My parents have owned it since '94, and
Okay.
my dad's been in the construction industry forever. And it kind of came to the point where he wanted to start a construction company and started it. And for a couple of years, it was this one-man show. And then
Dang.
my mom came on board a couple of years later, and they've been running it ever since. And I hopped on board. I don't know. Actually, I just got a memory today. It was the first siding job I ever sold. It was like 5 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And so yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's great because it keeps me involved with my family, but it's makes me money. So that's also a
Yeah.
big plus, right?
Yeah. So what specifically do you guys do?
So it's all exterior, essentially residential. We kind of dabble a little bit in commercial apartment buildings. We haven't done that too much recently, but mainly residential construction, siding, windows, roofing, gutters, doors, decks. If it's attached to the house and it's on the outside of it, we probably do it in some capacity.
Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. So what's I guess the day in the life of You.
Of me. So it's a really interesting day actually, because there'll be days like today. I'll let you know what I'm doing. So I have
Yeah.
this morning.
Uh-huh.
Early before this, it was mainly just emails, checking in on a few things, and then I'll be going up to the office, checking in with our siding crew, our window crew, and just kind of getting them laid out with some stuff that we have coming up.
Okay.
And then after that, just more emailing, checking in on jobs, reaching out to potential customers, things like that. But it could vary. I mean, there's some days where I'm driving from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m., going from house to house to house to house, from Spokane
Jeez.
to, we usually, our areas probably like within 2 hours, I'd say, of Spokane.
Okay.
Keeps our guys not having to drive a ton and us having to pay them just to drive and go do the work. So keeps
Yeah.
our costs down in that regard. But my day always is different, which is nice because I like having
Yeah.
instead of just going to work and doing the same thing and knowing exactly what that day might hold.
Yeah.
I meet new people. I talk with new people. I learn their stories. I try to improve their home, and that's my day.
Wow. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun with it. Like I said, it's nice having just a new experience every day and not being kind of that mundane aspect day after day after day, which there's a lot of people who like that sort of structure.
Yeah.
And I feel like I thrive without structure, but
Yeah.
keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what do you think is the mission of your guys' company?
So it's pretty interesting, actually. So the name of the show is My House, My Home. Let's see if I can get our slogan right. So we haven't used it in a while because we don't do very much advertising anymore
Yeah.
because it's all referral based. So we used to have, TV ads, radio ads, phone. We're actually still in the phone book, and we've gotten 2 calls this week from the phone book, which is really interesting.
That is interesting.
Our slogan was making a home out of a house or something like that. We're making it just where it's not just a place that you live, but it's a place that you can make your own and raise your family and really just feel comfortable being in it. And
Yeah.
so that's our main mission, and putting up products that we believe in and is huge for me too, because if I was in a sales position where every time I went home I felt kind of slimy, like I
Yeah.
don't really love my day, I don't really like what I sell, I don't believe in what I sell.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that, and so that also is nice, where I feel like each time I go into a customer's house, potential customer's house, I feel really good about it, and I feel
Yeah.
passionate about it, And I think in any regard, if there's something I'm selling, I have to believe in it, and that's what we do, and we make sure we do it right and make things as easy as possible on the customer.
That's really cool. So I guess just talking to you for a little bit
Mm-hmm.
before we've done this, I've kind of seen that you're very ingrained into the Spokane community and you want to like put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
So what's, I guess, the future with that? Like, do you want to do side jobs with the Spokane community, or do you kind of just want to stay with the whole construction family business
Right.
thing?
You know, that's a good question, and it's been there's been a lot of discussions as far as what the future holds
Yeah,
for, especially
exactly.
in this kind of period in the country where there's a lot of uncertainty. I've had potential customers already tell me that, they would have done it, but with the economy in its current state, they're unsure exactly what's coming, and so they don't want to put themselves too far out and have the economy crash, go into a recession, anything like that. And so there have been a lot of discussions because my parents have gone through, my dad went through, there's a little bit of a bubble in the 90s, but then the big one in 2008, and so they've been through that and they know what that's like. And the construction industry is super unfriendly to recessions because of the fact that we rely so much on our customers having money to spend. And if they either don't have money to spend or they're unsure how much money they need to have for multiple years, it really kind of dampens what we can do. And so it's mainly looking at what how do we keep ourselves running with a profit and making sure that our employees are in a good position, and mainly just really kind of gauging what the market looks like. And with already the crunch of the supply chain, that doesn't make it any easier. We have some of our windows that are, we just ordered some windows that say the ship date's December 1st. And like that is just not super beneficial when you're trying to run a company on a day-to-day basis. And so we're looking at all these different options and different things we can do. And, Spokane's a great community. There's a lot of good things that happen here. And outside of my direct work, I do like really giving back to the place that's given me and my family so much. And that's kind of how we look at it. And there's a lot of things that I do to try to help.
Yeah. So what like specifically are those things?
So I know if we look at the my Greater American Construction for instance in the past, we've actually done some Habitat with Humanity stuff, donating some product and doing some of that to just help out in that regard. Me on a personal level, there's been some stuff I've done with United Way, with the Emerging Leaders Society, and you can try to give back both with our time and with our money. When we have events and when we try to get donations put together. And a lot of that is just really trying to, again, like I said, support a community that is really important to a lot of people, that does provide a lot for a lot of people. And I mean, it's growing so fast. There's so many people who want to live here. And I mean, there's a reason for it. There really is. And if I can do a little part in a grand scheme, I mean, if you look at other people, if everyone does just a little bit, I mean, that adds up to a lot, especially with how many people are moving to Spokane. We have so many people here now that a little bit from everybody turns out to be a lot.
Yeah, I feel like Spokane is definitely going to be growing in the next 10 years. And just being here for 2 years, like I've just seen how close-knit the community is and how everyone just wants to help each other out in any way that is. So
right, yeah, and that's a little bit kind of getting interesting with how fast Spokane's growing, because we look at the construction industry and the cost of everything. And it's not cheap for people to move here. It's not cheap for people to live here at the moment. And there's a lot that has to happen in the construction industry for things to kind of level out, and I'm not sure if that will happen. The cost of what we pay on building materials is high across the country, but in Spokane County is just astronomical, and the cost of building apartment complexes, the cost of building houses for people. I mean, I've talked with homeowners who have looked at building houses and they're not for a few years because it's gone up 3 times in the last 3 years. And that's just not feasible for a lot of people. Majority of people, really, it's just not a friendly place to be in. And again, when it comes down to Greater American and looking at what we need, it's hard for people when they're doing so many different home projects. What is the most important one for them? And so let's say they need to do siding. Let's say that you have to completely rewire their home. They need a new electrical service. Their yard's trash. I mean, there's all these different home improvement projects, and you have to go in and in my perspective, I try to give people the most honest answer. Like if I'm looking at their house and we don't do electrical, but their electrical's really bad or their plumbing's really bad, and they're having me look at a couple different things. I'm not going to try and sell them siding if their house could catch on fire the next week because their electrical's from the 1920s.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing where we're a little bit different too.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of companies that are going to come in and they're going to be like, hey, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. And when in fact, like their roof, for instance, their roof might have another 5 years where there's a lot of companies that are just going to come in, give a bid for a roof and head out and hope that they sign with them when, it just doesn't need to happen. And so that's another thing we kind of take pride in is just really being truthful. You want to be sold the way, like when I go into someone's house, when I talk to someone, I kind of imagine myself in their position. Like how would I like to be talked to? How would I enjoy to be sold? Because it makes things so much easier, and it comes off more compassionate and more. You build a connection with someone better when you really are truthful with them, you're honest with them, and you just have fun with it. Really, I don't like to go in and hardball people and make people feel uncomfortable because there's a lot of companies that won't leave until you sign. And then that becomes also problematic, and so we're in the business of really just trying to improve people's homes, their lives, and doing so in a manner that makes them feel, comfortable in doing so.
Yeah. So did you have any sales background before this, or did you have any schooling in that?
It's funny because not really. A lot of it is just kind of watching my dad do it. And so when I was really young, I would kind of go with him from bid to bid just for fun because that's what you do with your dad. You just go and hang out with him at work. And so I kind of got a really good feel for how he does things, and I really did believe that the way that he did it was the right way to do it. And then I went to school for journalism, and so it gave me that really good, person-to-person contact, understanding how to interview people, meeting new people, and being comfortable talking with someone you've never met before. Yeah. So that was the only thing journalism really gave me as far as the construction sales side goes. Now I write on the side. I do the journalism stuff, but that's more of a passion job. And so that benefited me. But as far as actual sales experience goes, it's all just, again, watching my dad and just doing it and learning it on the fly. And there's a lot of things I learn something new every day. It seems like when I go into someone's house and I have to tweak my sales pitch, or I do something wrong and I have to, kind of learn from those mistakes because, I don't have any of that sales experience. I didn't do any of these programs that a lot of salespeople go through, and even in construction, they go on these programs that really teach people how to sell. And that's great and all. There's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like and this probably is true in every job, but you really don't get that experience until you just do it. You could read books on it. You can watch other people do it, but I mean, even in the construction trade, it's the same thing. We see so many employees coming in saying, "Oh yeah, I've done this, I've seen this done," and then they start to do it and they can't do it because they've never done it before, and that's fine. But you got to be truthful on it because we expect you to be able to do it if you say you can, and so and that's truth. With every job, you got to get experience. You got to start somewhere low usually and work your way up, and that's just the nature of the game.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I'm studying business administration right now, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. And it is interesting because when I think of sales, I always think oh, I don't want to be slimy or somehow deceive them to get money and stuff. And it's really cool that you guys choose to be as honest as you can, and that in the end is going to make you guys more successful.
Right. So. Sales is a fascinating place. It really there's a wide spectrum of sales, and it's a very vague job, I guess, in the grand. I mean, if someone comes up to you and they say this has been my experience. If someone comes up and they say they're in sales, I feel like usually it's not it's not a very popular type sales job, if that makes sense. So they do something that seems a little more slimy. Like if someone comes up to you and they kind of explain to you what they do, and they're like, "Well, sales is it is sales, but this is what I do. This is how I do it." Yeah. I feel like that's a little bit more safe. When it's the people who come up and they're you ask them, "Well, what do you do?" "Well, I'm in sales." Well, what does that mean? Like do you sell vacuum cleaners, or do you go door to door? How does this work? And so that's kind of been the interesting thing that I've experienced as I get older and I talk with people in their careers. And so when I tell people what I do, I explain I'm a sales manager at a construction company, and this is what we do. And I feel like, again, same thing that makes people a little more comfortable thinking like, okay, this guy isn't, like when I walked in today, when I kind of told you what I did,
Yeah.
I kind of explained a little bit because
Yeah.
when people come up and they say, oh, they do sales, you're going to be like, oh, what is this guy going to sell me this time?
Yeah.
And you get a lot of that too as you get older. You get so many people especially from high school, they'll kind of start reaching out to you on stuff and all these different, get rich quick things. And a lot of that comes down to sales. A lot of that, there's
The
a lot
pyramid
of
schemes
sales.
and
Yep.
stuff.
They're out there and they're out there in full force. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, so I guess, are you guys looking to expand past your 2-hour radius in Spokane, or are you just planning on staying?
There have been some discussions with potential, Tri-Cities aspect, kind of teaming up
Yeah.
with someone down there. And again, with the current economical climate, that kind of makes some of those plans and discussions
Yeah.
a little more interesting, a little more in depth, a little more laid back, not so aggressive in wanting to do so. And it's always been kind of the thought that that's what we might do, at least in the past, even before I came on board, of some sort of way to expand the business. And
Yeah.
it's not, nothing's easy, but it's a very interesting way to try and build, especially when you're based out of Spokane, and there's so much of what we do is based on the fact that our day-to-day activities always include us three, and we have a really good
Yeah.
pulse on what's going on. Our guys who we have, very trustworthy. We know exactly what kind of work they're going to do. And when you start getting bigger, then you start kind of losing some of that personal touch and some of that control
Yeah.
as far as your quality of work, the quality of employees, and just overall comfortability of everything that goes on. And so that's part of the issue with expanding. But it's still a discussion that has happened recently and probably will continue to happen. And
Yeah.
it's because the goal, you shouldn't just live in the status quo. You should always look at how to grow, how to get
Yeah.
bigger, how to do better things. And even if they don't happen, as long as you have those thoughts, it makes your status quo better because you're always trying to get better. You're always trying to make the next step. And, that's the most important thing because
Yeah.
if you just fall into the same routines, you really just you have this not the ability to move forward. And that's always been my kind of goal, is to keep things interesting and fresh, because that it also keeps me interesting, and people don't feel like I'm not going to give them the time of day when I go into their house.
Wow, that's really cool. This is a little bit off topic, but I'm just a little curious.
Yeah.
So what do you do with like journalism?
So I cover sports for the Spokesman Review,
Okay,
and it's
gotcha.
everything from high school sports, Gonzaga athletics, auto racing, disc golf. Every local call. I've essentially covered every team and every sport inside of Spokane in some capacity.
Wow.
And that's again, like I said, my passion job, and that's something that
Yeah.
I went to school for. I love telling stories. I love telling. I enjoy telling high school stories more than anything, because that's going to be potentially their big moment. That might
Yeah.
be the story that's framed for the rest of their lives. And I was actually just talking to a buddy last week who got. This was last week. Yeah, last week who got married, and I was talking to his dad about this exact same thing. It's the day after the wedding, and I was talking to a few people that I had just met and kind of explained this exact same question. And the reason why I enjoy telling high school stories more is, and his dad backed this up, is because people will frame it. That's their one thing,
Yeah.
especially if they don't go on to college, they don't go on to anything else sports related. Like he has his son Joe. He had a story done with his photo in the paper, and like that's up in his house, and like that's their one big thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I always appreciate. And so I feel a little bit more pressure with that too, because
Yeah.
that kid's gonna read it. There's parents, his grandparents, his aunts, his uncles, his siblings, like everyone's gonna read that, and they're going to be
Yeah.
dissecting every single part of it. So I have to have my facts straight, but at the same time, I really enjoy that, because they're more appreciative. Because like when I write a story on GU basketball, they have a billion stories
Yeah.
written on them every week, and so it's just normal to them. And when a high school kid gets their story told, it could be the one and only time it ever happens. And so I take a little more pride writing that than I do anything else. But I just like writing. I like telling stories, and like I told you, meeting new people and learning their stories. Even when I go into their homes, it's a
Yeah.
very similar thing.
Yeah.
I usually just don't write stories on the people I meet for Greater American.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah, I can seriously see like all of those skills come together, even just from talking to you for a little bit. So.
Right. Yeah, and it works out well because I again, writing doesn't make me as much money as it would have. If I was a writer in Spokane 50 years ago, everyone in town would have known me. It's just a little bit different now, and so online's changed the game, and it's just the nature of it, but it's something that I'm still glad I'm able to do and able to experience, while also again going and making some money doing sales and still working with my family. That part's awesome. It keeps us all connected, and it probably makes us bicker a little bit more, but that's part of it. You'd bicker with anybody, and I think we appreciate that aspect though too, because if we didn't respect each other enough, we wouldn't really bring up all the issues and different things that go on a day-to-day aspect of running a business. And so I think it also just helps in the grand scheme too.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you about all of your pursuits. The future
Thanks
looks
for having
bright.
me.
Yeah.
It's nice meeting you. Like you said, when you walk in, you never know who you're gonna meet. And, it's been nice to getting to know you a little bit too. I'll have to after the show, I'll have to get to figure out what sort of businesses you're interested in and getting into, because there's a lot out there, and you never know what's gonna come knocking.
For sure. Well, thank you so much. Thank you guys for tuning in to My House, My Home, and we'll see you next time.
Weather in the inland Northwest can wear you down. And if your gutters are in poor condition or you do not have gutters, you could suffer damage that could cost a fortune to fix. Rainman Seamless Rain Gutters has almost 30 years of professional experience in serving the inland Northwest region and strives to ensure customer service that is second to none, from the time you call to the end of the project.
Starting a digging project? Before you reach for the shovel, you must click callbeforeyoudig.org, alerting your local utility companies to come out and mark any lines they have near your dig site. Protect our buried utilities and click callbeforeyoudig.org.
Hello and welcome back to Spokane Talks News Matters. Today I'm here with Scotty running against Marcus Riccelli out in, which district was it?
That's the 3rd district.
3rd district for state representative, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Well, recently we just had the primaries, of course, here in Washington State. And Scotty, congratulations on
Thank you.
making it into the top 2. Yeah. And I think you were one of only 2 running,
yes,
correct?
So, hey, it's pretty easy. But I had a great experience in the primary. This is my very first time running for office. I don't have a campaign manager. I'm running a very lean campaign. And what I did was I kind of just walked around town and I talked to people in our city. In the 3rd district, you represent a large portion of our city, and had great conversations with people on their doorstep. And the numbers came out, and I am very excited to have this benchmark.
Yeah.
As I continue forward in the general election, just getting myself introduced to the community. And so now we make sure people have an understanding of what their choice is in this. Mm-hmm. And also, we work hard to encourage people to vote in the general election. We needs a good turnout.
Yeah,
so.
and usually I was going to say midterm elections don't usually turn out as well as, say, presidential elections and in presidential years 2024. But I think with big key topics, especially here locally, inflation, high gas prices associated with that, the economic burdens, high crime, I think the Republican Party is seated in a good enough position to where a lot of these candidates might come out swinging and
Well, you know
actually
what's
win.
interesting is that the conversations I just had over and over again with people in our city were actually very focused around some of what you mentioned, but public safety is a concern of people. It's a high priority for people, what they want, and I was so encouraged by the conversations I had with young people in our city as well, because the overwhelming consensus that I received from residents in Spokane is that they want a state representative who is going to have a positive working relationship with our police department. I built that when I was assistant to the mayor and city administrator for 2 years, and I'm proudly endorsed by the Spokane Police Guild, and I am so excited to form that partnership, and it's going to be a very positive thing. But if I get this job, and I'd be so honored to do it, we're going to make safety a priority, and that's going to happen through the laws in our state. But another thing that people talked about a lot, of course, is the cost of living, and people were quite perplexed by the fact that we had a $15 billion surplus in the state budget, and yet somehow taxes are being increased. I think what we should actually be doing is finding ways to give back to the residents of our city. We could do that in the form of tax relief.
And if you look over the past, I was just going to say, a couple of years, our tax revenues here in Washington State have been growing exponentially.
Right. So we have a situation in which, majority members of the legislature, including Marcus Riccelli, voted and approved a gas tax that's potentially going to raise the price of gas over 40 cents next year. Wow. How unnecessary.
It's very unnecessary, especially when inflation is in times. I get it that the Democrats want to help mitigate the climate and climate change is occurring. We've seen this is evident, but you can't do it while taxing the consumers.
Well, why can't we accomplish things through things like incentive?
Right.
It always has to be a form of punishment, it seems, from this other side. And I don't like it, and people in our city don't like it. And so what we're going to do, if I get in there, and there's a number of great candidates running for state representative, we're going to get in there and we're going to bring common sense back to the laws in our state. I think it's so important. As a 29-year-old, what I want to do is I want to be common sense. I want to be pragmatic. And that's what the people in our city, I think largely that's what they want. And I am excited to continue talking to people. But I also want to be very candid about the decision that people have. In this election, you can choose between two people, myself or Marcus Riccelli, and it's so interesting because at a time when Marcus Riccelli was working from a place of animosity towards police officers and instituting policies that have unfortunately caused unsafe conditions in our city. That's correct. Unsafe conditions in our city. And for our wonderful and heroic police officers that we respect and thank so much for what they're doing. But he was instituting policies that put unsafe conditions on us that were unnecessary.
Such as the chasing policy, right? Or whatever.
Yes, you can look back and identify so many. But I was in the mayor's office at that time as assistant to the mayor and city administrator. What I was doing while Marcus was instituting policies that were considered anti-police and put our police officers in jeopardy, as well as created unsafe conditions in our community. I was in the mayor's office as assistant to the mayor and city administrator, building a positive working relationship with our police officers because I respect them, and I'm the one who's endorsed by the Spokane Police Guild. I'm so grateful for that. But also, while I was, meeting developers and business owners and learning about how we can address the housing crisis in our state, what I want to do is find out how I can help as a state lawmaker. It's interesting because Marcus was instituting energy codes that are actually going to make it harder to build in our state. I'm endorsed by the Associated Builders and Contractors. I am so honored by their endorsement. I look forward to doing things like making it easier to build condos in our state. But there's a lot of things that I think we could do, to help with the housing. I look forward to learning more. And I think the choice is clear. And I will say to the people in Spokane, vote for me, because I will do a better job for you. I can do this better, and I will get us some great results. We're going to work on improving the safety of our city. We're going to work on lowering or providing tax relief to people. And, we're going to do what we can to be common sense and pragmatic. And I look forward to being a representative who does that.
Well, Scott, we really do appreciate it.
Thank
you
you.
coming on and sharing your views and the results recently of the 2022 primaries.
Yes.
And hopefully you go out swinging here in the
Yeah.
election coming up. And it's
Well,
November 8th, correct?
That's correct. We've got some time. It's going to be a really exciting few months here. I look forward to meeting more people in my hometown that I love so much. And I look forward to the conversations that I'm going to be able to continue to have. So I'm so thankful to be here, and I would be honored to have the support of the people in Spokane.
Okay. Well, Scott, yet again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day.
Can you believe it was like 6 weeks ago that we drove by? Did it, babe? We did it. Now your eyes are all teary.
Thank you so much for watching The Pulse of Spokane. Join us every Friday for a new edition. Until then, have a great weekend.